Welcome back to Awaken Hope. I am so super grateful. I have a fabulous guest here with me today. Her name is Ala Esther Levy, and she is the creator of Recognize and Manage Your Level of Crazy formula, also widely known as Level of Crazy Method, a practical approach that helps leaders and teams transform stress and burnout into clarity and results. So I am so thankful to have this conversation because before we started recording, I explained that I am in the search for a new social media person as well as a new assistant because now I'm managing my own crazy and it has gone chaotic. Welcome, Esther. Thank you so much for being here and having this conversation. I look forward to learning from you as how to manage my crazy.
Well, you know what? We learn from each other. So it's all good. I totally get it. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you. And always talking about EQ and level of crazy is my favorite thing in the world. So let's do this.
Perfect. So tell me, what is level of crazy method? I mean, EQ, I understand EQ and stuff, but for the listeners that don't know what EQ is, can you describe it and just kind of dive into it and we'll kind of go from there?
Yeah, so EQ, let's start from the beginning. So emotional intelligence and emotional quotient. So a lot of people know what IQ is,
Mm-hmm.
which is how smart we are, right? How cognitively smart we are. We get high IQ scores,
Mm-hmm.
and that usually makes us feel smart and good and amazing. And all that is wonderful. And then there's this other part, which is called emotional intelligence, EQ. So EQ is the emotional quotient, which is the score of the EI, emotional intelligence faculty.
Mm.
So it's really about how emotionally smart we are. So we're head smart, but then
Mm-hmm.
there's this other part of us that's emotionally smart, and that part really has to do with how do we connect to number one, the most important relationship of all, ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and then how do we connect now and relate to the rest of the world around us? And
Mm.
so emotional intelligence, EQ, EI, EQ, is one of the most important faculties that we can ever hope to develop. And the higher it is, the more we are able to connect and live this productive, happy, satisfied, most yummy life.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that we're not going to have challenges. You
Right.
know, like right now, you're dealing with some challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And so I call that, I named it the Recognize and Manage Your Level of Crazy formula because it's my way of bringing some lightheartedness to the
Mm.
realities of life. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I mean by that, the level of crazy or the recognize and manage your level of crazy, it's a three-step process. It's really recognizing, so being able to recognize what's going on with you
Mm-hmm.
and then managing, so recognize and managing, so then start to look at strategies and ways to manage the crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And and then with EQ is the part that now we're using EQ to do all this. So the formula itself is really, and there's lots of tools and whatnot in my book and amazing things that we can explore. But the essence of this whole thing is really just the ability to recognize and manage your level of crazy, is the state of mind, is where are you in this moment? And then, how do we recognize it and then manage it and now move on to the next thing that
Mm-hmm.
life has just thrown at us.
Well, I love what you have created and stuff. I would love for you to share the title of your book and how people can tap into that and get in touch with you. because EQ is important. Emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. It's very important to have. You can have, again, you can have IQ, like you said, and you can be high on the IQ spectrum or typical. And that doesn't define a person, but EQ, I think, plays, and this is my thoughts, but EQ says a lot more about a person than necessarily their IQ. Am I wrong?
No, you're right on. You know, it's fascinating because there's a lot of people that are very smart, a lot of people that are brilliant, they can recite, a whole, let's just say, encyclopedia for those of us that know what an encyclopedia is. For you youngsters out there, an encyclopedia was a large book, with lots of volumes. And we would have these crazy books in our house, and it was kind of like a dictionary. There's another
Right?
word that you may not know, dictionary, which is another big book with lots of meanings and things like that. God, I miss those times, right?
Yep.
And and so where was I? I caramba. So so
You
people, are so smart,
right.
but then that emotion part, that intuitive part, that empathy part, and all these other connections that are so important, the ability to cry, the ability to relate, the ability to
Mm,
communicate that, hey, I'm having a hard time, I need to talk about this.
right.
Those kinds of, without yelling and screaming and having a nervous breakdown when you're doing it, right?
Right.
Uh, all those things are so important. And, I was talking to someone today who, you know, reconfirmed to me just how important EQ is right now because we're moving into the age of AI and all of that is so great. And, I'm one of those that's like, it could be great, but it could also suck,
Mhm.
Um, because technology, I always say, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who says this, technology has always advanced,
Right.
but humans have not always caught up to the advancement. And we
Mhm.
can't because we are emotional beings. We
Right.
are, spiritual beings on a human journey. That's just my belief system.
No.
And right, so it's it's very important that we continue to learn how to be a better human. And to be a better
Mm,
human, which means staying empathetic, staying connected to our intuition and to our genuine self, and learning how to genuinely, authentically have human conversations, but not ones that tear each other down. And that's what we keep continuing to learn is how do we get along for God's sake? How do we not continue to listen to the noise that,
right.
we don't agree on this particular topic. So now it means that we can't be friends anymore because, we're two sides of something that, to be honest, may even be created to divide us in the first
Right.
place.
Right.
So, so all of this is EQ. And
Mm,
and so as much as smart as we are, we have to be able to tap into these non-intellectual nuances
right.
and information that just keeps wanting to bombard us day in and day out. And I'm a firm believer, or excuse me, I'm a follower of Joe Dispenza's work,
Yeah.
right? Joe
Hmm.
Dispenza, and
Hmm.
he's one of the greatest pioneers of obviously he's into neuroscience and
Yep.
and all the quantum field stuff and just like amazing stuff. And he talks a lot about EQ. And I didn't realize that until I started to follow him a couple years ago. And I was like, oh my God, dude, what you're describing is EQ. And every time I listen to him now, when he talks about it's not the healing, because he's in the healing realm, so right, because he's always
Right.
trying to help people
Right.
heal. He's like, it's not the healing that we should be chasing, it's the change, is who
Mm-hmm.
do you want to be? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh my God, I've been saying that intuitively for the longest because you can't change. I mean, sorry, you can't heal if you don't change. If you
Correct.
keep doing the same stuff over and over and over again, you literally have to become a different person. And so, we're getting a little bit into neuroscience here, but that's what he talks about, and that's EQ. That's
Right.
new decisions create new actions, new results. So if you want new results, you got to create new actions, and you can't create new actions if you're still operating on the old system. And how do you, and then he talks about, obviously personality and things like that. You have to have a new personality. And so, yeah, it's all of this, it's all intertwined and it's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many great teachers out there. And I'm so excited that the world is moving um,
And that.
more hungry for this information. The book, I didn't forget, the book is right here. It's Level of Crazy, like an a-hole. Everybody has one. And I'm very, very proud of my baby. And you can find it on my website. You can go straight to the website, and the website is right there under my name there, but I'm sure you'll put it in the notes as well, eieqinstitute.com.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you can find the book there. You can find me there. You can find about all my different ways that I can serve you and serve the
Perfect.
masses and all that.
And we'll make sure all of her information's in the show notes. I'm just, I align with and resonate with what you're talking about. I understand emotional quotient and stuff and IQ and you have to have both of them. You're right. You can't have one without the other. Well, you can, but you don't function completely. It's like having missing a main component of how you're going to function in this world. But we're going to take a short break and we'll be back. And then we're going to continue this conversation because she is speaking up my alley. We'll be right back. Stay. Here we go. Welcome back. Again, I have Ala Esther Levy, and she is here to promote her book and also talk about managing your crazy method, which she kind of came in at a perfect time because, yes, I am managing my own crazy. But we've been talking about IQ and EQ. And over the break, we were just having a little chat. And one of the things that really popped into my mind was EQ is so important. We do have to have it. I mean, don't get me wrong, IQ is important. It measures your level of intelligence and your so-called intelligence in the world. However, EQ is just as important when it comes to measuring someone's ability. And I believe it's like if you have a cake, if you're missing a main ingredient, which EQ is part of that main ingredient, it's not going to turn out like you want it to because it's going to be lacking something. How did you come about with this formula, and share with the listeners what kind of brought this about, because it is fascinating.
So many, 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 many moons ago, um, I recognized that I had my own level of crazy, and that's basically how it started. But it started mainly because I was in a situation in my early 20s where I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. I
Mm,
was in it was just a unfulfilling marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And career was just not really nothing. It
Mm-hmm.
was nothing. And it was just like a lot of, I would say because I was in my 20s, it was time of self-discovery. But I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that. I didn't know that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
In our 20s, we think that we are, and I'm sorry to all those people that are listening that are in their 20s, but what you'll learn is that every decade you become a new you.
Yes.
And the beauty of that is that in your 20s, go easy on yourself because in your 20s, you're just starting out. You're just literally starting out. And there's so many things going on. And you're like, what am I? Who am I? You feel like you're probably doing that the whole time, yeah, that you're, being a human. But in your 20s, you want to get married. You're thinking about all these things, career, this and that. Um, but it's just so far away because when you get to be our age,
Yeah.
you'll see what happens. But the point is that when I was in my stages of life in my 20s, so I was going through all these different things, and the autoimmune and the marriage and the lack of career and all this stuff really got me questioning. And so I eventually got help for the autoimmune, but I found my own help basically because it was at the start of the alternative and holistic movement. That
Okay.
that should date me right there. Okay, so now you guys know how old I am. Okay, so it was a long time ago. It was about 50 years ago. No, not 50 years ago. I'm sorry, about 30 years ago.
Well, you look
And
pretty good if it was
and
50 years ago.
sorry.
I said you look pretty darn good if it was 50 years ago.
Yes, exactly. Um, so it was about 30 years ago, and the movement had just started. It was lots of vitamins and, supplements and what is this holistic thing and blah, 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 whatever. And so thank God that I was strong-headed, young woman who was not going to take, you know, doctors wanting to cut my spleen out, because they thought that it had no purpose.
Mm.
That's what they told me. Oh, it has no purpose. So, just cut it out, just like they're doing with a lot of things right now, which I hate to put that out there in the world, but guys, just be careful when you're being told to cut out certain organs. Um, so anyway, so they wanted to cut my spleen out and, all this stuff. And I was like, no, that, I think God put it in there for a reason. So we're not just going to do that right away. And so I went down the rabbit hole of nutrition and spirituality. And that's the same time that I found Kabbalah, uh,
Mm.
the wisdom of Kabbalah. And it helped me a lot with my marriage and it helped me with my, with my spirituality, but also with my holistic life. And so anyway, I started to go down this rabbit hole more and more and more. And eventually I got divorced, which was the right thing for me at that time.
Right.
And for him, it wasn't just me, it was about us.
Right.
And we're now actually very good friends, and it's amazing. I'm so happy for us both. And eventually, as that rabbit hole continued, I found myself deeply immersed in spirituality, holistic health, all the stuff. And I was doing better. And then I got remarried
Mm-hmm.
and continued down that path. And then I got divorced again
Mm.
and started questioning deeper because I was, I was still studying Kabbalah and I was still doing holistic health, but something was still not right. Something was still not working.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to really dive deeper. And that's when I stepped away from my spiritual home.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been there, close to 12 years. And it was
Wow.
very painful and it was very hard and it was very scary to walk away. And it
Mm-hmm.
was it was hard to walk away from the second marriage also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I had to. I had to walk away and I had to start all over again. And it was probably the most healing time of my life in the sense
Mm.
that I really reconnected to myself. And through that process is when I found um, emotional intelligence. That
Mm.
was when I went to, I started going to every workshop known to man. And I got my life coach, and that was during the period of life coaching. So life coaching became a big thing, and Tony Robbins and this and that, whatever. And I was like, oh my God, whatever. And so I went to one of his seminars, and
Mhm.
I was just sitting there with 8,000 other people. And all of a sudden, the guy starts, we did the fire walk. And then the
Right.
next day, we went into this other piece. And this other piece, I remember the moment like it was 5 minutes ago.
Mhm.
He he was going through his little training manual.
Mhm.
He turns the page and then he says, and now let's talk about emotional intelligence. And I was like, what? What's that? What is
Mhm.
that? And I was just like so curious. And he starts talking about what it is and the pillars and this and that and whatever. And people have, there's different schools of thought that have different pillars, and that's fine. But it all leads to the same thing.
Mhm.
And when he was done explaining it, I almost fell off my chair.
Oh my
I
goodness.
was like, this is mine to do. This is mine. Because I had been searching for my thing,
Mhm.
right? What is it that I'm responsible for in this lifetime? What is it that I can sink my teeth into for the rest of my life
Mhm.
and just dive deep and just feel yummy all the time? And that was it. That was it.
Wow.
And so I came back home and I went to my office where I was working, and they were like, okay, okay, okay. Like I was already a firecracker. But when I came back with this EQ work, I was unstoppable. And
Oh
they
my goodness.
couldn't, they were like, okay, do whatever you want. Because I was making, like, I was driving my boss crazy. Like, we got to do this. We got to do this. You don't understand. Da, 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 da. Like, and it did. It worked beautifully. The agents, I was able to train several classes. We had a call center, so I was able to train several training classes with this information.
Right.
And they were actually floored. They were like, why aren't they teaching us this? Why are we learning this after the fact? And I'm like, look, I have my ideas, but I'm not going to say a word because I cannot. I've caused enough trouble here. So I need to just let me do this. And you guys just do it and just love it and just go out there and make yourselves rock and roll. And they loved it. And so after 3 classes of trainings and me just kind of blowing up the place, they, unfortunately, there was a lot of egos, and it didn't go further than this.
Mhm.
Um, but everyone knew top down that
Mhm.
EQ was one of the most important faculties that we needed to bring into the company. And it was just a matter of, you know, who was going to do it and who brought it and yada, yada,
Right.
yada. You know how that goes.
Right.
And who suffers? The agents suffer, the morale suffers, the bottom line suffers, the same old crap that goes on. And so for me, when I find an organization or a company, a small business, or a
Mhm.
spiritual center, or a senior living, any place that is open to my teachings, I'm like, wow, you guys are amazing, and you guys are so forward thinking
Mhm.
because you guys are not busy with the egos. You're
Mhm.
busy with what matters most, and it's this information. And so it was unfortunate. It was unfortunate, but that's how it was, and it is what it is. But I'm glad. I'm glad that now more and more organizations are out there and they're doing this, and I think we need more. And but again, it's one step at a time. So
Of course, which is going to lead us to a small break. And then we're going to come back and talk about EQ because it is important. I totally 100% agree with Esther. The EQ, it's a must, it's a non negotiable. And we'll get into that. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Again, I have Esther Levy here, and we are talking about the EQ. And for those of you who are just now tuning in, EI is emotion, it's your intelligence, your IQ, but EQ is your emotional intelligence, emotional quotient, which is just as important as IQ. And yes, for those of you who think, oh no, IQ is more, I'm here to pour water on that and just say, listen with your heart and your ears. EQ, when you're dealing with people, and we all deal with people in some form or fashion, unless you're a hermit and don't deal with anybody, you're going to deal with people. EQ is essential. It is very important to have because it's going to give you an insight that you wouldn't just have if you just had natural intelligence. You've got to be able to read what's the emotional intelligence around me and how do I respond to it. But over the break, Esther was saying she left out a small part, but we're going to let her continue with that conversation and then we'll get back into the EQ.
yeah, so I just wanted to, you asked me, so how did I discover this? How did I create it with this formula? So as I was going down that rabbit hole and teaching and this and that, whatever at the corporate, at the company where I was working, um, at one point I noticed that I had these two parts of me.
Mm-hmm.
And the two parts of me were this reactive crazy, as I've coined, and this proactive crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
the reactive crazy is this part where we are reactive, angry, frustrated, feeling disconnected, completely discombobulated, misaligned, like just completely like off our rocker, right? And there's different levels of that, obviously.
Right.
And then you have the proactive crazy, which is all the good stuff, right? Like the crazy creative, the crazy good, the crazy happy, the crazy, um, imaginative, the best versions of ourselves where we just feel like we're on top of the world. Nothing can stop us. And we're connected to ourselves, we're connected to others, we're connected to our perfect job, we're connected to our perfect soulmate, we're connected to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the two types of crazy. And so at the point where I was starting to teach this stuff and really getting into the meat of it and really trying to, really understanding it. And then eventually I realized about these two crazies and I was like, oh my God, like this is very powerful. And at that time, I had already started to cultivate these ideas for the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a work in progress ever since. And so I believe in 20, I think it was 2017 or 2018 now, I don't remember. I started the EIEQ Institute,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the platform for the website actually, the EIEQinstitute.com. And that was a platform to provide resources for anyone who wanted to learn more about EQ and this level of crazy. And so I have videos on there and I have all kinds of stuff on there now. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then eventually I started to now teach and facilitate. And as the book started to come out, now I have like I go and I call them EQ intentional EQ workshops. And so,
Mm-hmm.
whether I am doing like a yoga slash movement,
Mm-hmm.
breath, consciousness type of event,
Mhm.
uh, or I'm teaching a workshop at a company or a small business, or I'm giving a class, a Zoom class with a spiritual organization or whatever it is, senior speaking at a senior center, whatever it is. I incorporate a lot of the teachings from the book.
Hmm.
And I always incorporate movement, like Qigong has become a part of me. Qigong, I love Qigong. Some people may know it as Tai Chi. So Qigong is just a little, it's a little piece of Tai Chi in the sense that it's more movement, more relaxation, more energy flow, that type of thing. It's not as martial artsy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of elderly people do it. A lot of people in our age do it because it's not as high impact. It's very relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but it's so amazing. And so I've been doing that, and a lot of my work is still very connected to health and wellness. And so everything under EQ is all of this. It's all of it. Because if you do want healthy emotions, if
Mm-hmm.
you do want mental health,
Mm-hmm.
mental health is not just um going to a therapist and working on your mental health. That's one component. But true mental health, true emotional health, high IQ, or sorry, high EQ, it's all connected to our health and well-being. So our mind, body, spirit, it's all connected. And that has to do with diet, that has to do with, movement, it has to do with stress management. So there's a lot of tools that can help with all those things. And really quick, I just want to define my version of mental health. Like for me, there's three components of mental
Okay.
health.
Okay.
So the first one is severe mental health in the sense that somebody needs clinical support.
Right.
Like they are not coherent of this world at all. They are just not here.
Right. They
Um, they are
they can.
not here, and they need to be medically and institutionally handled.
Right.
The second piece is like, okay, you've had some trauma, and
Mm-hmm.
now you're dealing with some heavy stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really intense, and you gotta like really just get some, a little bit more deeper layer kind of support, okay, fine. And then the third one is more like what we deal with,
Mm-hmm.
more like everyday folks just trying to deal with life and family and, just everyday kind of stuff, going to work, dealing with my wife, dealing with my husband, like all these different things. And yes, there will be trauma in that too, and there will be wounds in there too. But it's more of that level. It's like the lower version. And I hear a lot of talk about mental health, you know?
Yeah. It
This
tends
one
to
has
be
mental
switched.
health issues. This one has mental health issues. And a lot of celebrities now, I think it's gotten better, but like in the past couple of years, it was like, oh, I have mental health issues and da, 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 whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, I hate to say this, but you guys, okay, you have tons of money, tons of like status, tons of like anything you could possibly need and want. And I don't know if it's necessarily mental health versus, again, level of crazy. It's like that last version of where's my purpose,
Right.
right? What is my
Right.
purpose now? What am I meant to be doing in this world? I
Yeah.
have all this influence, I have all this money, I have all this status. What should I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And that is that's a spiritual thing. That's like, okay. You need to really reconnect to spirit and really like, okay, what do I need to be doing now that I can influence the world and make the world a better place? instead of just me, 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 me. You know what I mean? Because some of it
Right.
just felt a little narcissistic to me.
Well, we've unfortunately, if you look at, which, we look at the way the world has gone, how, I mean, you look over the decades that we've gone through, and what the 70s look like, and the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. So yeah, we're in the 2000s, but we're towards the end of, midway through the 2000s. Um, we've evolved, we've changed, and I agree with you. They tend to lump challenges, people that people have challenges. That's a given. We live in these earthly bodies. We experience life at different levels, but I don't necessarily think that everything that they're going through is necessarily a mental health challenge. It tends to get lumped in there because it's something that they can, kind of put a label on and say, oh, you've got XYZ, therefore you've got a mental health challenge. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's just a level of crazy, and they need to work out their level of crazy and figure out what is it that, like you said, reconnect with themselves, reconnect with figuring out what their purpose is. I firmly do believe when people are connected and they really take the time to figure out what is it that your purpose is in this world, it makes the level of crazy that we go through time and time again for some a little bit more, it makes more sense, or at least this is the way my brain thinks, because I'm like, when I figured out, and I've told people, I really feel that what I'm doing is my purpose. This is what I was sent to this world to do. I cannot explain it. I just know it. But it's everything, it's kind of fallen into place. And I am grateful for this. But once I figured out, started defining what is my purpose, my level of crazy seemed to subside. Now, things still explode. As we all know, life happens. We're not immune to that. But you can navigate that level of crazy a little bit more manageable when it explodes and you're like, oh man, that was not the setback I was looking for. Or that, I didn't expect to be here. But yeah, we still, like everybody, we have to feel through it. We have to express whatever we're feeling. We can't just put on a happy face and say, oh, everything is so good and I'm perfect and there's nothing wrong with me. I would say, okay, and your hair's on fire and every smoke bombs are coming through your head. So, because that doesn't solve anything, it just stuffs everything down, and we don't navigate that well. I love your
Yeah.
topic, that level of crazy, because it makes a lot of sense. It really does. And, I can honestly say, before we had this conversation, I would have never termed it a level of crazy. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't a level of crazy. It just, that term had never popped up. But I love how you define it, because you're right. It is just the way we function. And the more EQ we have, the more that level of crazy can be managed.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things I do want to say as a caveat is, there's a guy who I've been listening to. He's a business guy, Alex, Alex something. Um, and I'll have to look it up. But anyway, he's a big time gym wellness guy. And he talks about this concept of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of people back in the day, it was like this big thing, find your purpose, find your purpose. Then you have to like monetize your passion. You should monetize your purpose and yada, yada, whatever. And I agree with him in the sense that like he had monetized his passion, which was health and wellness, gyms, things like that. And then he went full circle. He owned like a bunch of gyms and he did a bunch of stuff and he landed many years later on the other side and he realized this sucked. It sucked. And I don't want to ever do that again. And I love my going to the gym and I love training, but I don't want to monetize it anymore. And I want to just leave my passion where my passion is, and then I'll monetize some other way. And so purpose kind of falls in the same genre, maybe a little bit. And I will say that I don't want anyone on this podcast to hear it as, oh, I gotta find my purpose. I gotta find my purpose now. And oh my God, this woman said I have to find my purpose. And if I don't find it, I'm gonna die. And my level of crazy and right. Okay, so let's stop right there. I wanna bring it to ease. I want to bring your heart to ease that when I say purpose, it could be anything. It could be waking up in the morning and serving your husband pancakes,
Mm-hmm.
or waking up in the morning and just getting yourself to dressed so you can go take the dog out
Mm-hmm.
and being 100% at ease and in full fulfillment of that energy and that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so purpose is really another way of me describing this feeling of just pure joy and fulfillment,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that if you're on this earth, I do believe though that we should leave this world better than we found it.
Right.
And we should continue to like what you're doing with your work, you're finding people that are doing cool stuff and you bring them on your show and you let us share our information. That's awesome. But maybe next week, just saying, right? Your new purpose could be something else. You could decide that, okay, I'm good. That was a great run. Now I want to be, a pharmaceutical rep. You know what I mean? So it could change at any given moment. Um, and and that's okay. That's okay. As long as you're connecting to what your heart expands into.
Right.
And, when you feel expansive and not contractive,
Mm-hmm.
and that is proactive crazy. That is what I talk about. And that is the purpose of this book, is to learn how to go from that reactive crazy to this proactive crazy, and using the different tools. And one of the most important tools, which you spoke about earlier, um, I'm gonna just I'm going to explain how I name it. I've named it in my chapter. There's a whole chapter in here called the bricks. The
Mm-hmm.
bricks, the bricks of growing your EQ.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason why I call them bricks. And when you get the book, you'll understand what that is. Um, but one of the very first bricks is functional spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Functional spirituality. And the reason why I call it functional spirituality is because most people, and maybe a lot have shifted now, but back in the day, spirituality was meditation, just sitting there talking with this psychobabble, and that was enough. It's like all the right words, you're using all the right vocabulary, but you're not really changing. You're not really transforming. You're
Mm-hmm.
not really doing Joe Dispenza's work, which is, neuroscience. We're not breaking the habits, the patterns, the crap. We're just continuing the same old stuff and calling it a beautiful word. And then my favorite is telling people that they should look in the mirror because you're so highly evolved, and that you have to self-reflect. And so I call it functional spirituality because there's an actual practicality to doing this work, whether it is meditation, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a practicality in that. You're making a conscious effort to sit and to relax and to I in my mind also I have another how I see meditations. For me, I've discovered there's three kinds of meditations.
Mm-hmm.
um the first one is where you're just doing it to relax,
Right.
just to calm yourself.
Right.
Another one is to visualize because you have
Right.
like goals that you want to achieve. And the
Mm-hmm.
third one is for cleansing because you can
Mm-hmm.
you can raise frequencies and different things like that to cleanse or to elevate energy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so this functional spirituality, it really gives a practical knowing that spirituality, whether we're talking about angels or guides or signs, we see in
Mm-hmm.
life, right?
Mm-hmm.
A sign,
Right.
you'll see something or somebody will say something and you're like, oh my God, I was just thinking about that. Or you'll see something on TV and you'll be like, oh my God, they're talking to me on TV, or a song that
Right.
comes through and you're like, oh my God, like listen to the lyrics of that song. Like these are all signs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but these are all practical. In my mind, they're all practical. They're not just these airy fairy kinds of whimsical things that just happen. I feel like they really do have a structure and a practical um, reality to them. And so I speak about that when you know this functional spirituality and you're applying it, that is the number one tool that starts all the other tools because
Mm.
because like you had mentioned, you said, um, you had mentioned how, damn, it just ran through my mind. But the point is that we need to understand this first tool, this functional spirituality, because we have to believe in something higher than ourselves, and we
Right.
have to understand that there's a reason why we're here. And
Right.
even if we're not a God person,
Right.
even if we don't believe in God, that's okay. But what I recognize though is that there are people in the world that just want to do good,
Yeah.
right? Regardless whether
Mm-hmm.
God exists, doesn't exist, they don't know why we're here, but they're just a good person and they
Right.
just want to do good. And and if you're that person, awesome. Awesome. And knowing that that's how you're going to get your crazy. That's what you were saying, that your crazy subsides.
Mm.
Your crazy balances out because
Mm-hmm.
you realize that there's some other thing going on. There's something beyond the mundane. Even if you don't believe in anything, and even if you're not sure, it's okay. It's okay. Just knowing that you're working on yourself and you're becoming a better person and you're bringing humanity to another level and you're
Mm-hmm.
working on your EQ, it's enough. You know, at least for me, I think it's enough. And I think if more people focused on that, we would have a much more peaceful world. Unfortunately, we don't have that. We have a lot of people caught up in religions and things and
Yeah.
and it's causing a lot of division.
I agree with you. You really have to find something that lights your heart up, gives you joy. Not, I have learned, and this is just me, I've learned if there's something I'm trying or doing and I have consternation or I have this ew feeling about, it's probably not the right thing for me. And but if I make a decision and I feel joy, I feel peace, and I feel, oh, this is lovely. I don't have to know all the logistics. I don't have to know everything else. But if I keep following that bliss, like Dr. Joe Dispenza says, follow your bliss. Be in that space of that emotion, whatever that emotion is that you're seeking. But it ideally needs to be a good emotion. It can't be a negative one because that's what you're going to bring about, because science does it, as they say, where the mind goes, emotions follow. Emotions create what we or who we are. So if you have joy and you have peace, the other things will fall into place.
Right.
You don't have to chase it. You just have to know, okay, maybe, I feel ill about something. Well,
Mhm.
pause on it, think about it. Maybe that's not the right choice for you. But if you can make a decision and you go, oh my, I feel joy, I feel peace, then that is what you need to follow. And that's that foundation of following your bliss, following your peace to get you to where you can work on building the EQ. You can work on building the other aspects that will help bring your level of crazy to a manageable level.
Yeah.
Well, I have enjoyed this conversation, but before we conclude our conversation, are there any last minute thoughts or words of expertise you would love to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important things is just to remember that we are here to learn, grow, transform. And nobody, in my opinion, I don't think anybody has it figured out, to be honest. I think we're all still in this process. I think even Joe Dispenza, and some of these guys, they always say that they themselves are floored and inspired and in awe when things turn out a certain way because they're like, oh my God, like this is even more powerful than I even thought, like they're even like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just keep focusing on being better, focused on being a better human, um, for yourself, for your own little circle around you, and then that will expand further and further and further. And I love what you were saying about staying connected to what makes you truly happy and
Mm-hmm.
following that. I agree. I agree. It's very important to stay connected to what's expanding you because that's really that's your GPS,
Mm-hmm.
that's your GPS. It's telling you, yes, go this way or no, don't go this way.
Yeah.
And that's very wise. And so you see that your EQ is right there. You see that?
Hmm.
It's working perfectly. Your level of crazy is working perfectly.
Even though the circumstances around me are kind of going, well, okay, we need to work on that. But those are beyond my control. And I recognize, when crazy happens, because it happens to all of us, you breathe through it and you
Yeah.
realize, okay,
Yeah.
today's not necessarily what I had intended it to be, in the sense of things have popped up and I'm like, really? That was not what I woke up thinking would happen. However, life happens to all of us. None of us are immune to that. And I honestly, truly believe a lot. And I align with what Alla Esther Levy resonates with, her EQ, EIEQ Institute. Go get the book, go check out her website. She does have a lot of resources on her website. And like I said, if I am grateful that you came. I hope you will come again and share your amazing wisdom with the audience. And I do know if this resonates with you, then there's a reason you need it. Go check out her website, check out her book, purchase her book, and learn. If you don't know what EQ is, she's got a lot of information on there about EQ. Yes, we could probably do a whole episode on EQ, but there's only so many moments, so many minutes in a recording. So go check out what EQ is, what it means to you, and learn to foster that, because EQ is important. It is essential. It's kind of like, as I would call it, a non-negotiable. You need to build it. It's like building a muscle. If you don't have EQ, you're lacking something. And the more EQ you have, the more your experiences, the more your career, your family life, your job, whatever it is that you're dealing with will become more manageable. I truly believe that. But it's taken me, and I'm not, it took me 40 years, 4 decades. I was in my 40s. It took me 40 years before that started sinking in. If someone would have asked me, when I was in my 20s about EQ, I would have said, oh, what? Oh, what? But as she said, when you're in your 20s, you're still navigating life. So give yourself a lot of compassion, be good. And each year, each decade, you become a new person, like she said. So be good to yourselves. Go check out Esther's book and know you are okay. You will be okay. Just follow your bliss. Follow what makes you content. Follow what makes you happy. Because without that, then I can promise you that level of crazy becomes reactive. Thank you, Esther, so much. And we look forward to having you again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Take care, ladies and gentlemen. And, download it. I have an archive page and I have over 400 episodes. So if you miss it, it's still there. You can go check it out. And also, if someone's coming into your mind while you're listening, there's a reason why they're popping into your thoughts. They need to hear this episode. So share it with them. Everybody in this world could benefit from having equal IQ and EQ. Actually, I would say personally, EQ needs to be slightly higher. So take care of yourselves and keep on listening. And thank you again for being my guest. And I look forward to having her again and sharing so much more about EI, EQ. Talk later. Take care.